Welcome to Starbound's Fantasy channel. My name is Carol, and I'll be your narrator for today. Before we get started with the story, go ahead, check and make sure that you're subscribed. It's 100% free, and it allows our stories to pop up in your feed more often. With that, let's get started. The Bone Throne sat atop a die of skulls. Human, dwarf, elf, and even a few orcs. Krazak the Unbroken lounged upon it. One massive leg thrown over the armrest, carved from the femur of some long-dead giant. His gray-streaked black hair hung in thick braids adorned with trophies, finger bones, teeth, and bits of armor from those who had dared challenge him over his 20-year reign. Today, the stronghold of Razor Peak celebrated. Drums thundered against the mountainside, their rhythm quick and violent like the heartbeat of a predator. The smell of roasting meat mingled with sweat, blood, and fermented berry wine. Orcs danced and fought and fucked in the dust-choked streets, their celebrations as brutal as their warfare.
"Another!"
Krazak bellowed, tossing aside a horn of wine. It clattered against the stone floor, the dregs splashing like blood across flagstones. A younger orc scrambled to refill it, nearly tripping over himself in his haste. From his elevated position, Krazak surveyed the revelry with the detached interest of a god, observing his creation. His massive chest, covered in scars both ritual and earned, expanded with a deep breath. Even at 50 summers, no one had managed to best him. 37 challengers. 37 corpses added to the bone pile beneath the stronghold. At his right stood Razka, lithe for an orc, but no less dangerous. The intricate patterns of blue war paint across her green skin marked her as his chosen, future matriarch of the tribe, if she could bear strong children. Her amber eyes scanned the crowd constantly, ever vigilant. She alone seemed unmoved by the festivities.
"You shall enjoy yourself,"
Krazak growled, grabbing her wrist.
"It's a celebration."
"Celebrations make people careless," she replied, not meeting his gaze.
"Remember what happened to your predecessor?"
Krazak laughed, a sound like stones grinding together.
"Murder during a feast, yes, but not by an enemy, by his own blood brother."
He patted the ancient battle axe that rested against his throne. Its blade glinted in the torchlight. The strange runes etched along its edge seemed to pulse with each flicker of flame.
"Besides, I have Blood Cleaver. No weapon forged can stand against it."
A commotion at the gates interrupted the festivities. The drums stuttered, then stopped altogether. The crowd parted like blood-dark water as a contingent of guards marched through, surrounding a single figure so incongruous that several orcs openly laughed. A human, small by any measure, but especially by orcish standards. Dust-covered and road-weary, dressed in simple traveling clothes, with no armor and no visible weapons. Brown hair tied back in a tight knot, revealing a face that might have been handsome by human standards, but was unremarkable to orcish eyes. The only unusual features were the slight points to his ears, and strange amber flecks in his otherwise ordinary brown eyes.
"What's this?"
Krazak called out, straightening in his throne.
"A lost traveler? Or perhaps a merchant?"
The guard shoved the human forward. He stumbled, but caught himself with unexpected grace.
"Speaks the common tongue,"
one guard grunted.
"Says she's come to challenge you."
The crowd erupted in jeers and laughter. Several orcs doubled over, slapping their thighs or the backs of those near them. One threw a half-gnawed bone at the human, that dodged without even looking. Krazak's laughter boomed loudest of all.
"Challenge me? With what? Harsh language?"
He leaned forward, massive forearms resting on his knees.
"Tell me, little man, what's your name? I'd like to know whose skull will adorn my piston tray."
The human lifted his chin. His voice carried clearly across the suddenly quiet courtyard. My name is Thorn, and I've come for what's mine. Krazik's yellow eyes narrowed.
And what might that be?
The axe, Thorn said simply. Blood cleaver. The crowd went from raucous to silent in the space of a heartbeat. No one had ever dared claim the Chieftain's weapon, not in 20 years of rule.
Bring him to me,
Krazik ordered, a dangerous edge to his voice. The guards hauled Thorn forward, up the stone steps to the dais where Krazik's throne dominated the view. Up close, the size difference was even more ludicrous. Krazik stood nearly 8 feet tall, his shoulders twice as broad as the humans'. His arms were thick as the human's thighs, corded with muscle and mapped with old battle scars.
You have stones, tiny human,
Krazik growled, circling Thorn like a predator.
Or perhaps you're touched by moon madness. The axe has been mine since before you were born.
It's been in your possession, Thorn corrected. There's a difference. Krazik's hand shot out, wrapping around Thorn's throat and lifting him off the ground. The human didn't struggle, didn't even grab at the hand crushing his windpipe. He simply stared back, those strange amber flecks in his eyes seeming to glow brighter.
I could crush your throat right now,
Krazik hissed.
No one will question it.
Tribal law, Thorn managed to rasp. Any challenge must be accepted. Honor demands it. From the edge of the dais, an ancient female orc stepped forward. Elder Gorka, her white hair hanging in long braids decorated with bones and beads. She rapped her gnarled staff against the stone.
He speaks truth,
she croaked.
The old ways must be observed. Any challenge for leadership must be answered in the combat pit, not with a backhand execution.
Krazik bared his tusks in annoyance, but released his grip. Thorn dropped to his knees, gasping for air.
Fine,
Krazik spat.
We'll do this properly. Tomorrow at dawn in the combat pit.
He glanced at Razka.
Prepare the pit. I want the whole tribe to witness this amusement.
He reached down and grabbed Thorn's face, forcing the human to look up at him.
Do you have any last requests, little man? Or a particular meal? I can be generous to the soon-to-be deceased.
Thorn's voice, though rough from the strangling, remained steady. Just a place outside your walls to prepare. I have my own rituals to observe. Krazik laughed.
Let him sit in the dirt and pray to whatever weak gods humans worship. It will make no difference come morning.
As the guards dragged Thorn away, Elder Gorka hobbled closer to Krazik.
There's something strange about this one,
she muttered, too low for the others to hear.
Yes,
Krazik agreed.
He's either the bravest or the most foolish human I've ever encountered.
No. Gorka shook her head.
It's his eyes. Did you notice the colour? What of them? Humans have weak eyes or watery colours. Not amber,
Gorka said.
Almost never amber. That's an orc trait.
Krazik snorted.
A coincidence. Or perhaps his grandmother rutted with an orc scout. It makes no difference. Tomorrow he dies.
Night fell over Razor Peak like a heavy blanket. Torches burned along the walls, casting long shadows across the rocky mountain terrain surrounding the forest. Just beyond the reach of torchlight, Thorn knelt in the dirt, his fingers working methodically. He had removed his simple traveling clothes. Bare-chested in the cold mountain air, his skin prickled with goosebumps, but he showed no discomfort. By the light of a small fire, the markings covering his torso were visible. Not tattoos exactly, but something similar. alchemical symbols, etched into his skin with silver-black ink that seemed to capture the firelight in strange ways. From a worn leather pack, he removed several items: a small stone mortar and pestle, bundles of dried herbs tied with red string, a tiny obsidian knife, and a shallow clay bowl. With steady hands, he crushed the herbs, pungent mint, bitter wormwood, earthy mushroom caps, and mixed them with a clear liquid from a crystal vial. The resulting paste filled the air with an acrid smell, sharp enough to make eyes water. Thorn seemed unaffected. He began to chant in a language that was neither human nor orcish, but seemed to borrow elements from both. The sounds rolled from his tongue like stones tumbling down a mountain, harsh and guttural, yet following a cadence that suggested ancient ritual. With the obsidian blade, he made a shallow cut across his palm. Blood welled, dark in the firelight. He let it drip into the clay bowl, where it mixed with the herb paste. 3 drops, 7, 9, each counted with a syllable of his chant. Nearby, a pair of orc guards watched with a mixture of boredom and mild curiosity.
"What is he doing?"
one asked, scratching at a tusk.
"Some human magic,"
the other replied with a dismissive grunt.
"Won't help him. No magic can stand against blood cleaver." "Should we stop him?" "Chief said to let him pray. If it gives him comfort before death, where's the harm?"
Thorn seemed oblivious to their conversation. He dipped his fingers into the mixture of blood and herbs, then drew symbols across his chest, reinforcing the marks already there. With each symbol, he spoke a name. Ancestors, perhaps, or forgotten gods. As the ritual continued, something subtle began to change. The guards wouldn't have noticed if they hadn't been staring directly at him. His lean muscles seemed to flex and shift beneath his skin, as if rearranging themselves. The bones of his face appeared sharper, his jaw more prominent, and his eyes, even from a distance, it was clear that the amber flecks were spreading, consuming the brown that surrounded them. One guard shifted uncomfortably.
"I don't like this. Maybe we should..." "No,"
the other cut him off.
"We have orders. Besides, whatever he's attempting, Krasik will end him quickly tomorrow."
Thorn completed his ritual as the moon reached its zenith. He cleaned his supplies meticulously, repacked them, and then lay down on the bare ground. Despite the cold, despite the stone and dirt, he fell asleep almost instantly, his breathing deep and steady. In the darkness, the guards didn't notice how his canines had lengthened ever so slightly, pressing against his bottom lip. Dawn broke over Razor Peak in shades of blood and rust. The entire tribe gathered around the combat pit, a circular arena, maybe 50 paces across, its dirt floor stained with dark from countless battles. Sharpened wood stakes formed a barrier between the combatants and the spectators, though they served more to keep fighters in than to keep the crowd out. The orcs jostled for position, the stronger shoving the weaker aside to claim better views. Children climbed onto shoulders or squirmed between legs to reach the front. The air vibrated with excited chatter and the occasional clash of weapons against shields, traditional ways to show anticipation. At the northern edge of the pit, a raised platform held Krasik's secondary throne, a simpler affair of black wood and iron. Here, the chieftain would sit before entering combat, and here the victor would be acknowledged after the fight. Elder Gorka was already occupying her place beside it, her ancient eyes surveying the gathered tribe with a troubled expression. A horn blasted 3 times, silencing the crowd. Krazik emerged from his quarters, naked to the waist, his massive green chest and arms gleaming with ritual oil. Blue and red paint marked his face, the colors of combats and blood. In his right hand he carried Bloodcleaver, the ancient battle axe catching the morning light like a hungry thing. The crowd roared its approval as he approached the pit. Krazik raised the axe high, turning slowly to acknowledge his people. The weapon was a fearsome thing, double-bladed, the metal an unusual dark gray. Along the curved edge, runes glowed faintly crimson, pulsing like a heartbeat.
Today,
Krazak bellowed.
I add another skull to my collection! Another fool who thought himself worthy!
The crowd stomped and cheered. Krazak leaped down into the pits, landing with surprising grace for one so large. He paced the circular arena like a caged predator, occasionally spinning the axe in elaborate patterns that showcased both its perfect balance and his mastery over it. A second horn blast announced the challenger. The crowd's roar diminished to murmurs and snickers as Thorn was led to the edge of the pit. Like Krazak, he was bare-chested and barefoot, wearing only simple trousers. Unlike the night before, however, something about him had changed. He stood straighter, his lean muscles more defined. The alchemical symbols across his chest and arms seemed more pronounced, almost like living things against his skin. His face had subtly altered, cheekbones higher, jaw stronger, ears more prominently pointed, and his eyes, now entirely amber, the color of autumn leaves or aged whiskey, with no brown remaining. Many in the crowd fell silent, noticing these changes. Even Krazak paused in his display, studying his opponent with newfound wariness.
The blade!
Elder Gorka breathed, leaning forward on her staff.
Look at his reaction to the blade.
Indeed, Thorn's gaze had fixed on Bloodcleaver. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Something like pain, or hunger, flashed across his face. A third horn blast signaled the beginning of the ceremony. A younger orc approached Thorn, carrying a rack of weapons. Axes, swords, maces, spears, all well crafted, though none as magnificent as Bloodcleaver.
Chose,
the orc grunted, gesturing to the weapons. Thorn shook his head. I need no weapon. The crowd erupted again, this time in genuine laughter. Even Krazak grinned, displaying yellowed tusks.
You'll face me unarmed?
He called across the pit.
Have you come here seeking death so badly?
I've come here seeking what was stolen, Thorn replied, his voice carrying clearly despite the noise. Nothing more. He jumped down into the pit, landing lightly on the balls of his feet. Up close, the changes in him were even more apparent. Though still much smaller than Krazak, he moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost predatory. Elder Gorka raised her staff.
The combat is for leadership of the Razor Peak tribe and possession of the axe Bloodcleaver,
she intoned, her voice surprisingly strong for one so ancient.
It ends in death or surrender. There are no other rules.
She brought the staff down sharply.
Begin!
Krazak didn't hesitate. He charged forward, a mountain of muscle and fury, Bloodcleaver raised high. The attack was straightforward, a powerful overhead strike that would cleave Thorn from crown to navel if it connected. Thorn waited until the last possible moment, then twisted sideways. The axe buried itself in the dirt where he had stood a heartbeat before. As Krazak wrenched it free, Thorn circled, staying just out of reach.
Stand still and die with honor!
Krazak snarled, launching another attack, a horizontal sweep that would have cut Thorn in half at the waist. Again, Thorn evaded, this time dropping to a crouch as the blade whistled over his head. He rolled forward inside Krazak's guard and delivered a sharp punch to the orc's kidney before dancing away. Krazak grunted in surprise more than pain. The blow would have doubled over another orc, but his massive frame absorbed it. Still, his yellow eyes narrowed. The human moved too quickly, too confidently.
You've had good training,
Krazak observed, adjusting his grip on the axe.
Good. It would be boring otherwise.
I've had more than training, Thorn replied. As he spoke, something strange happened. His voice deepened, the tenor gaining a resonant quality that hadn't been there before. I've had heritage. The orcs nearest the pit murmured among themselves. Thorn was changing before their eyes. His muscles swelled visibly, rearranging themselves beneath his skin. The bones in his face shifted, becoming more angular, more orcish.
What trickery is this?
Krazek demanded, hesitating in his attack.
No trick, Thorn said. Just blood awakening.
He closed his eyes briefly, and vivid images flashed through his mind. A small village on the outskirts of human territory. A young boy with strange amber flecks in his eyes, sitting alone while other children played, their parents pulling them away, whispering about bad blood and tainted lines. The same boy, older now, finding a hidden compartment beneath his dying mother's bed. Inside, a journal bound in unfamiliar leather, written in 2 languages, Human Common and Orcish. His mother's confession, her tears staining the pages as she describes his great-grandmother, an orc healer named Mogrith, who had fallen in love with a human scout. Their child, his grandmother, born of 2 worlds and welcomed in neither, the family forced to hide their heritage, to pass as human while knowing they never truly belonged. And the stolen birthright, an axe passed down through generations, taken during what humans called the Orc Wars, and what orcs called the Great Purge. Bloodcleaver, his right of blood. Thorn opened his eyes, now glowing like twin embers.
That axe,
He said, pointing at Bloodcleaver.
belonged to my great-grandmother's line. Stolen during the Great Purge when mixed blood families were slaughtered for the crime of existing.
The crowd had gone incredibly silent. Elder Gorka gripped her staff so tightly her knuckles blanked.
Lies!
Krazek roared, but uncertainty flared across his face.
This axe has been in my family for generations. My grandfather took it from a worthy opponent in honorable combat.
Is that what they told you?
Thorn asked, his voice now carrying a distinct orcish rumble.
That it was honorable combat? Ask the elders about the Great Purge. Ask them how many unarmed women and children were slaughtered in their beds.
Krazek's face twisted in rage.
Enough talk!
He hurled himself forward, swinging Bloodcleaver in a barrage of attacks, overhead, diagonal, thrust, sweep, each powerful enough to end the fight instantly. But Thorn had changed too much now. His reflexes had sharpened, his body strengthened. He weaved between the strikes like a dancer, occasionally parrying with his forearms, which should have been severed, but somehow turned the blade aside with minimal damage.
The symbols.
Elder Gorka murmured to herself.
Blood alchemy. I haven't seen it in 60 years.
The combat continued, Krazek growing increasingly frustrated as his opponent refused to be hit, refused to die. Thorn made no aggressive moves, simply evading, watching, measuring. The dust swirled around them, kicked up by their movements, creating a haze through which the glow of Thorn's eyes shone like distant fires.
Fight me!
Krazek bellowed, sweat pouring down his face and chest.
Are you a coward like all humans?
I'm not fully human,
Thorn replied calmly.
and I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to reclaim what is mine.
He pointed at the axe again, and this time everyone saw it. The runes along the blade flared brighter, responding to his gesture. Krazek faltered, glancing down at the weapon in his hands, as if seeing it for the first time.
The axe recognizes its blood, Thorn continued. It always has. That's why it's never revealed its full power to you or your line. You've been wielding a fraction of its true strength.
More lies!
Krazak snarled, but doubt had crept into his voice. He raised Bloodcleaver again, but the attack lacked his earlier conviction.
Ask yourself,
Thorn pressed, circling slowly.
why the runes glow brighter now than they ever have before. Ask yourself why you've always felt the axe was holding something back. In a desperate move, Krazak flung the axe directly at Thorn's head. An unorthodox attack that should have been easy to dodge, but difficult to predict. Yet Thorn didn't move. Instead, he raised one hand, palm out. The axe stopped in midair, hovering a foot from his face. The runes blazed like fresh coals. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Elder Gorka nodded slowly, as if a long-held suspicion had been confirmed. Blood calls to blood, Thorn said softly, then raised his voice to address the gathered tribe. I am Thorn, great-grandson of Margaret the Red Fang clan and Jeremiah of the Western Territories. I have awakened the orcish blood in my veins through the ancient arts of blood alchemy, and I have come to reclaim my family's weapon and to reveal the lies your leaders have told for generations. The axe hung suspended in the air before Thorn, its runes pulsing like a heartbeat. He hadn't touched it yet, hadn't taken possession, but the weapon's response to his presence was undeniable. The gathered orcs murmured among themselves, the sounds growing from whispers to a dull roar. Krazak stood frozen, his massive chest heaving from exertion, yellow eyes fixed on the hovering weapon. For the first time in 20 years of rule, uncertainty creased his features.
Trickery,
he managed at last.
Some human magic.
Not magic, Thorn interrupted. Blood. The same blood that flows in your veins, though you deny it. His transformation continued even as he spoke. His shoulders broadened, muscles swelling and rearranging beneath his skin. The alchemical symbols tattooed across his torso seemed to sink deeper, no longer marks on the surface, but part of his very being. His face underwent the most dramatic changes. His jaw protruded slightly, accommodating the small tusks now emerging from his lower lip. His skin darkened, taking on a faint greenish tinge. Though still smaller than a full-blooded orc, he now stood nearly a foot taller than the average human, his frame solid with muscle.
Shamans!
Krazak bellowed, turning to the edge of the pit where a group of painted orcs stood waiting.
This is forbidden magic! Stop him!
The shamans conferred briefly, their painted faces grim. The eldest among them, a female with cracked tusks and milky eyes, spoke in the orcish tongue.
This is not magic recognized. Not shamanic, not demonic, it is something else.
Elder Gorka stepped forward, her ancient voice carrying across the now silent crowd.
It is blood alchemy, the old science from before the Great Divide, when our peoples were not so separate.
She tapped her staff against the ground.
It is legitimate. Not magic, but awakening.
Listen to me, Thorn called out, addressing the tribe rather than Krazak. For generations, your leaders have lied to you. They've preached purity of orcish blood, claiming that mixing with humans created weakness. He gestured to himself. Does this look like weakness to you? The crowd shifted uneasily. Several warriors near the front gripped their weapons tighter, but none moved to intervene. Such was the power of the combat pit. Once a challenge was underway, only death or surrender could end it. I have spent the last 15 years studying the ancient texts, Thorn continued, his voice deepening further as his transformation progressed. Journals from the time before the Great Purge. Records kept by mixed families who lived in the borderlands. Accounts of what really happened when the purists, both human and orc, decided to eliminate those who proved our peoples could coexist. Krazak spat in the dust. Fairy tales. The weak always create stories to explain their weakness. Then explain this, Thorn challenged, gesturing to the axe still hovering between them. Explain why Bloodcleaver responds to me. The weapon passed down through my great-grandmother's line for 7 generations before it was stolen.
A memory surfaced, vivid and painful. Thorn at 17, reading his great-grandmother's journal by candlelight. The pages were brittle with age. The ink faded. Her descriptions of the axe, how it bound itself to the bloodline, how it contained a fragment of each wielder's spirit, how it could never truly be owned by those not of blood, how it would always find its way back home, eventually. His first attempts at blood alchemy, painful, dangerous, often resulting in debilitating fevers. Years of trial and error, of studying forbidden texts, of tracking down ingredients across 3 continents, the bitter herbs from the northwestern wastes, the fungi that grew only in the deepest caves, the distilled essence of rare minerals found in ancient meteor craters, all to awaken what already lay dormant within him, all to reclaim what had been stolen.
The axe is bound to blood,
Thorn explained, his amber eyes scanning the crowd.
It can be used by others, yes, but it will never reveal its full power to them. It seeks its true wielder, always.
Enough!
Krasik roared. He lurched forward, attempting to grab the hovering axe. His fingers brushed the handle, and he screamed. The chieftain recoiled, clutching his hand. Where his skin had touched the weapon, angry red blisters formed, as if the wood and metal had turned into molten fire.
The axe rejects you, Thorn said quietly, as it has always rejected those who stole it.
Elder Gorka hobbled closer to the edge of the pit.
Thorn, son of mixed blood,
she called.
You speak of records. What records?
Thorn's gaze found her ancient face. Recognition flickered in his amber eyes.
You already know, Elder. You were there.
A tremor ran through Gorka's withered frame. Around her, others shifted uncomfortably, averting their eyes.
I have the census scrolls, Thorn continued. The bloodline records from before the Great Purge. Lists of every mixed family living in the borderlands. Documents proving that many among the Razor Peak tribe, including Krajak himself, carry human blood.
Lies!
Krajak bellowed, but his voice cracked. He glanced at Elder Gorka, uncertainty replacing rage in his yellow eyes.
Tell him, Elder! Tell him my line is pure!
Gorka said nothing. Her silence was answer enough. The truth hit Krajak. He staggered back, nearly losing his footing in the dusty arena.
No,
he whispered.
My father was a war chief. My father led raids that burned human villages to the ground.
Yes, Thorn agreed. They hated most fiercely what they feared within themselves. The Great Purge wasn't about racial purity. It was about erasing evidence. Destroying the records that proved orcish and human blood had mingled for centuries, and stealing powerful artifacts from mixed bloodlines to claim as purely orcish treasures.
Thorn reached out and grasped Bloodcleaver's handle. Unlike Krajak, he showed no pain at the contact. Instead, the runes along the blade blazed brighter, casting his transformed features in crimson light.
The final step,
he murmured, raising his voice so all could hear.
Blood to blood, spirit to spirit.
With his free hand, he drew the small obsidian knife from his waistband. Before anyone could stop to move him, he sliced his palm and smeared the blood along the axe's handle. The runes flared blindingly hot, then shifted from red to amber, the exact shade of Thorn's eyes. Thorn's transformation accelerated. His muscles bulged, bones cracking audibly as they rearranged and grew. His skin darkened further, the greenish tinge deepening. The symbols across his torso pulsed with inner light, then faded into his skin as if they had always been part of him. When it was complete, he stood nearly as tall as Krajak, his body a perfect blend of human and orcish traits. The intelligence and quickness of his human heritage combined with the power and endurance of his orcish blood. The axe hummed in his grip, responsive to every thought.
Half-breed!
Krazak snarled, but the insult lacked conviction. He knew he was beaten.
Yes, Thorn agreed simply. As are many among your tribe, whether they know it or not. Difference is, I don't deny what I am.
He stepped closer, Bloodcleaver held loosely at his side.
I embrace all parts of my heritage, and that is true strength.
Krazak lunged suddenly, desperation making him reckless. His massive fist swung toward Thorn's face in a blow that could shatter bone. But Thorn moved with impossible speed, sidestepping the attack and bringing the flat of the axe blade against Krazak's knee. The chieftain went down hard, dust billowing around him. Before he could rise, Thorn placed the edge of Bloodcleaver against his throat.
Yield, Thorn said quietly. This doesn't have to end in death.
Krazak's yellow eyes blazed with hatred and shame.
Finish it,
he growled.
I'll not live as a defeated chief.
Thorn studied him for a long moment, then removed the blade from Krazak's throat.
No, he said. Your death would solve nothing. It's time for truth, not more bloodshed.
He turned to address the crowd, axe held high. The weapon gleamed in the sunlight, its runes still glowing amber, resonating with his transformed body.
People of Razor Peak,
he called out.
I didn't come here to claim leadership or destroy your way of life. I came for what was stolen from my family and to speak truth to lies that have divided our peoples for generations.
He turned to Krazak, still kneeling in the dust.
Your chief carries human blood, as many among you do. The Great Purge buried this truth in blood and fire, but it cannot change reality. We are not separate races destined to hate each other. We are branches of the same tree that have grown in different directions.
A young female orc pushed to the front of the crowd. Razka, Krazak's intended mate. Her amber eyes, so similar to Thorn's, widened as she recognized the significance.
The eye color,
she said, her voice carrying in the silence.
I always wondered why mine differed from the others. Human blood, Thorn confirmed. About 3 generations back, I'd guess. It gives no weakness, only a different kind of strength.
The silence that followed was absolute. Hundreds of orcs stood frozen, digesting Thorn's words. Some faces registered shock, others denial, still others the dawning of understanding. Elder Gorka leaned heavily on her staff, ancient eyes filled with something between relief and sorrow. Krazak remained on his knees in the dust, defeat etched in every line of his massive body. Blood trickled from small cuts across his torso, minor wounds from combat, but each a reminder of his failure. When he finally raised his head, his yellow eyes had lost their fire.
Kill me,
he said again, voice hoarse.
It's your right, as victor.
Thorn lowered Bloodcleaver, studying the fallen chieftain.
No, he repeated. Your death would only martyr you. The tribe would cling tighter to the old lies.
He turned the axe in his hands, the runes along its edge still glowing with amber light.
Besides, death is too simple an answer for decades of deception.
At the edge of the combat pit, Razka vaulted over the sharpened stakes. She landed gracefully in the arena, approaching with caution, but without fear. Her amber eyes, so like Thorn's now, flicked between him and the fallen chieftain.
if what you said is true,
She said.
where is your proof? Not the axe's response, that could be some trick. Tangible proof
that our bloodlines are mixed. Thorn nodded, respecting the challenge. In my camp, I have fragments, partial census records that survived the burning, family trees pieced together from stories and scraps of parchment. He met her gaze directly. I don't know every line, but I've learned to recognize the signs. His eyes lingered on hers. Your eyes, for instance. That particular shade of amber is rare among full-blooded orcs. It often appears in mixed bloodlines. Razka's green skin paled slightly. You claim to know my heritage from looking at my eyes? Not precisely, Thorn replied. But I've studied enough family records to recognize patterns. The families from the High region, where I believe your ancestors hailed from, have distinctive traits that appear in you. From his position on the ground, Krazak growled. The records lie! They must! Convenient, Thorn observed, turning back to him. When the records support your claim to leadership, they're sacred truth. When they reveal uncomfortable facts about your ancestry, they're lies. He shook his head. That's how deception persists across generations. Elder Gorka had made her way down to the edge of the pit, moving with the painful slowness of extreme age. Her white braids swung as she looked from Thorn to Krazak to the gathered tribe.
I was there,
she said, her voice cracking with emotion.
During the Great Purge. I was young then, barely past my naming ceremony.
Her gnarled fingers tightened on her staff.
What he says is true. All of it.
A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. For an elder to confirm such a claim, it carried weight that couldn't be dismissed.
We killed our own,
Gorka continued, each word heavy with decades of suppressed guilt.
Neighbors, friends, family members whose only crime was loving someone with different blood. We burned the record houses. We stole their treasures. Weapons like blood cleaver that had been passed down through mixed bloodlines for generations. You knew all this time and said nothing?
Razka asked, disbelief clear in her voice. Gorka's ancient eyes clouded with shame.
At first, I was too young to understand. By the time I did, the new order was established. Those who questioned the narrative of blood purity disappeared in the night.
She looked around the table.
Later, I told myself that silence preserved peace, that the tribe would fracture if the truth came out. Perhaps I was just a coward.
Krazak struggled to his feet, swaying slightly.
Why?
He demanded.
Why would our ancestors do this, if not to preserve our purity?
Power, Thorn answered simply.
The same reason leaders have always fostered hatred between groups. United, the mixed communities were growing stronger. They represent a middle path, a potential peace between humans and orcs. Those who profited from conflict couldn't allow that.
He turned, addressing the crowd again.
Your leaders, and human leaders too, created the myth of blood purity to maintain their control. They taught you to hate part of yourselves.
A murmur ran through the gathered orcs. Some nodded slowly. Others shook their heads in denial. Near the back, several warriors gripped their weapons tighter, faces dark with anger at what they perceived as an attack on their very identity. Razka stepped forward, positioning herself between Thorn and the increasingly restless crowd.
What would you have us do with this truth?
Her voice carried a mix of challenge and genuine uncertainty.
Abandon our ways? Become like humans?
No, Thorn replied firmly.
Your ways have value. Your culture has strength. I'm not asking you to abandon anything except the lie that your blood makes you weaker.
He gestured to himself.
Look at what the combination has created. Not weaker. Different. With strengths from both lineages.
He raised Bloodcleaver, letting sunlight play across its ancient blade.
This weapon was forged by a mixed blood smith 8 generations ago. It channels power from both bloodlines, the raw strength of orcish heritage combined with the focused will of human ancestry. Together, they create something greater than either alone could achieve.
From the edge of the crowd, one of Krazak's loyal warriors pushed forward.
Enough of this half-breed speech,
he shouted.
He's trying to poison our minds with his human logic. Kill him and be done with it.
Several others voiced their agreement, brandishing weapons. The tension in the air thickened, poised on the knife's edge of violence. Krazak raised a hand, surprisingly, for silence.
No,
he said, his voice roughened by dust and defeat.
This was a challenge under the old laws. He won fairly.
The admission clearly cost him, each word forced through gritted teeth.
He has the right to speak.
The crowd settled uneasily. Krazak might have been defeated, but 20 years of absolute rule had conditioned the tribe to obey his commands. Thorn inclined his head slightly, acknowledging Krazak's unexpected support.
I didn't come here to take your society or take control, he reiterated. I came for what was stolen from my family and to speak truth to lies.
He lowered Bloodcleaver to his side.
What you do with that truth is your choice.
Elder Gorka tapped her staff against the ground, drawing all eyes.
The question remains. By right of combat, leadership of the tribe is yours to claim.
Her ancient eyes studied Thorn carefully.
Do you claim it?
The crowd held its breath. Even Krazak seemed to stiffen, waiting for the answer. Thorn shook his head.
No. I have no desire to lead Razor Peak. My purpose was the axe and the truth, nothing more.
Murmurs of surprise rippled through the gathering. In the tribal tradition, victors always claimed leadership. To refuse was unprecedented.
Then, who lage?
Someone called from the crowd.
That's for you to decide, Thorn replied. Perhaps it's time for something beyond combat to determine leadership. Perhaps wisdom should count as much as strength of arm.
Krazak's face darkened.
You would change our ways after claiming you didn't come to destroy our society? I offered a suggestion, not a command, Thorn countered. If your ways are strong, they'll survive questioning. If they're weak, perhaps they should change.
Before Krazak could respond, Razka stepped forward.
I claim right of succession, she announced,
her voice steady. As Krazak's chosen mate, she had stronger grounds than most to make such a claim.
Unless another wishes to challenge?
She turned slowly, amber eyes surveying the warriors who had been most vocal against Thorn's revelations. None stepped forward. Whatever their disagreements with the day's events, none wished to face Razka in combat. Her skill with a blade was legendary, even among a tribe of formidable fighters.
So be it,
Elder Gorka declared.
Razka will lead, unless challenged within the moon's turning.
She fixed the younger female with a penetrating stare.
What will you do with these revelations, new chieftain? Continue the old deceptions, or forge a new path?
Razka's expression remained carefully neutral.
I will consider all I've heard today. That is all I can promise for now.
Thorn nodded, accepting this. He turned to Krazak, who still stood unsteadily in the center of the pit.
And you? What will you do with the truth of your heritage?
Krazak spat in the dust.
I don't accept your truth, but I accept defeat.
He strengthened his massive shoulders with visible effort.
I'll leave Razor Peak, find my own path. As is your right, Thorn acknowledged.
He considered the fallen chieftain for a moment, then added, The human village of Rivermeet, 3 days' journey south, has a scholar named Marina who keeps copies of the old records. If you ever wish to know the truth of your lineage, seek her out. Krazak grunted non-committally, but something flickered in his yellow eyes. Perhaps the smallest seed of curiosity. Thorn turned back to the crowd, Bloodcleaver held easily in one hand. His transformation was complete now, a perfect hybrid of human and orc, embodying the strengths of both races. The alchemical symbols had vanished entirely, absorbed into his very being. "I take only what was stolen from my family," he announced. "The axe returns with me to my home in the Borderlands, but I leave you with a challenge. Build a society based on strength of character rather than false claims of bloodline purity." His amber eyes swept across the gathered faces. "Ask yourselves why the old hatred persists. Who benefits from keeping our peoples divided? Not you. Not the human villages that live in fear of raids. Only those who profit from conflict." A strange tension gripped the crowd. Not the earlier hostility, but something more complex. Discomfort, certainly, at having centuries of belief challenged. But also, in some faces, the dawning of recognition. Questions forming where once there had been only certainty. "You may leave in peace," Razka declared, assuming her new authority with natural ease. "None will hinder you." Thorn inclined his head in acknowledgement. Without another word, he turned and walked across the combat pit, Bloodcleaver balanced comfortably on his shoulder. The crowd parted before him, some watching with hostility, others with reluctant respect, a few with open curiosity. As he reached the edge of the gathering, a young orc child, no more than 6 or 7 summers, darted forward. Like Razka and Thorn himself, the child's eyes were amber.
"Are you really both?"
the child asked, voice pitched with innocent curiosity. Thorn knelt to meet the child's gaze. "Yes," he said simply, "and so are you, in your way. We all contain multitudes." The child's mother pulled her offspring back, but not with the fear or disgust that might have been expected. Instead, she regarded Thorn with thoughtful eyes before disappearing back into the crowd. Thorn continued on, out of the stronghold and down the mountainside. He didn't look back. The future, uncertain as it might be, lay ahead. He had accomplished what he came for, reclaimed his birthright, and planted seeds of truth that might, in time, grow into something more. Behind him, the orcs of Razor Peak began a difficult conversation about their past, their identity, and their future. Some voices were raised in anger, others in questioning, still others in tentative support of new possibilities. The outcome remained unclear. But the simple fact that the conversation was happening at all represented a seismic shift, a crack in the foundations of hatred that had defined relations between humans and orcs for generations. As Thorn descended the mountain path, Bloodcleaver hummed against his shoulder, its amber runes pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The transformation that had begun with the ritual and blood was complete. He was neither fully human nor fully orc. He was both, and something new besides. And in that new identity lay the potential for a different future, not just for himself, but for all who carried mixed heritage, acknowledged or hidden. A future where strength came not from denial, but from embracing every facet of one's being. The sun climbed higher as Thorn walked on, casting his shadow before him, the silhouette of something that had never existed before. A pioneer of a new way of being, the first of what might, someday, be many.